In this tutorial, we're going to show you how to isolate your files once you've done the appropriate clearance check on them and determined that there is 10 mils of clearance that is usable on your files. The files that we'll need to isolate are, for a double-sided board, the component side copper, the solder side copper, and we'll need to make a cutout for the board outline. In a single-sided board, you will skip isolating the component side and go directly to the solder side and the board outline. So remember, all of your settings should be on the layer table set to where the board outline and solder side for a double-sided board are set to mirror and set to type solder. If you have a single-sided board, your board outline and your copper layer should be set to component, and your drill layer is always set to drill. So let's work with the component side copper first. Let's go to hide all and then choose to view the component side copper. Now we're going to go to tools, isolate. And this is going to bring up this menu. You're going to here enter tool size of 10 mils, and here you can have the mill expand up to 5 passes around solder pads so that it will make you more room for you to solder and avoid solder bridges to the surrounding copper. Since with the mill you're not going to be able to remove the surrounding copper, this could be important if you're not using planes. Since we're using ground planes on this board, I'm going to not expand the pads because the 10 mil tool will isolate around both the interior of the clearance of the plane and also around the exterior of the traces and pads, as if it were doing 2 expansions anyway. So here we first select the layer, the component copper layer, select a 10 mil tool size, don't expand pads, and we are going to select the tool as pointed tool, and we are going to choose isolate, and that is going to generate a 10 mil isolation. Now here you can see the isolation is where the actual pointed tool is going to come and cut around your Gerber file on the bare copper. In order to more easily see this, I usually change this on the component side. Since my component side is blue, I change it to a red type of pastel color, for instance this one, so that I can more easily see the contrast between my layer and the tool path that was generated. Now for instance, where that multiple passes comes in handy is in an instance right here. If you want it to come around that pad a couple more times, you could have selected the do more than one pass option. But here this board is not very fast, it's not important, so it's going to cut just fine, just like that. So then the tool path being generated for the component side, we'll again hide all and work with the solder side copper. If you're doing a single-sided board, again this is going to be your only copper layer. Same thing, we go down to tools, isolate. We select the solder layer, 10 mils, don't expand pads, pointed tool. Make sure all those are the same and hit isolate. This will now generate a distinct isolation path for our solder side copper. And here this comes up in a pastel blue, which gives a good contrast to the red layer, so I won't change the color on that, but I will inspect and just look around, make sure, like especially in these thermal relief spots, that everything is being isolated. If there's certain spots that aren't being isolated correctly, then you may have to increase the clearance in your Gerber file or do some alterations in order to make that isolate correctly. But if you did the clearance check and it said that everything was okay, then that shouldn't happen. Always best to double check though, and it looks like everything here has been isolated. So I think we're done now with the copper layers. So we're going to hide all, and we're going to come back to the board outline file. Now here we're going to go to, and this could be edit or view, but it's always best to select view so that you don't inadvertently change anything. Then we again go to tools, isolate, But now we are going to select 62.5. This is the size of router that's going to be available to you. Why it's 62.5, I'm not sure. This is just what they sell, so I'm choose 62.5. Don't expand pads. I'm going to choose the PLC file or the board outline file, and I'm going to change the tool type to contour router. The contour router is used to cut around your board. This is going to create the cut around the board outline and cut out your final finished board. Once we hit isolate, this won't take long. It should just generate an isolation path, and I like to make this a darker green because it contrasts with the lighter green very well. Now you can see this dark green outline is where the router is going to cut out the board. We take a look at the layer table. This is also called an isolation, but it is actually a router cut rather than a milling cut. Then we can view all, and this will give you an overview of the entire work that you've done to this point. Now we're actually ready to mill the layers. So in the next tutorial, we're going to look at the tool table and make sure that all of the tools, sizes, and speeds are correct so that we're ready for milling.